from the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
All right, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight as we break down some of the Broncos trends over the last several years. We're going to get to the Kansas City Chiefs a little bit later on, probably in the next segment. But, Ben, let's go ahead and start here with what the Broncos have been doing this year. And it's remarkable to look at points allowed. And, again, you have to sort of factor in strength of schedule and all those kinds of things. But the Broncos, from last year at this time through 11 games to where they're at right now, they have allowed 102 points less than they did a year ago at this time. And you sort of factor in also partly the amount of turnovers they had, right? And they're third in the NFL. In the NFL, not just the AFC, but the NFL in points allowed. So what does that tell you about this team, specifically on the defensive side of the ball?
Well, it tells you two things. One, you just pointed out, the turnovers are down. They're not handing offenses extra possessions. This is a bend, don't break defense, right? And so the idea is keep the play in front of you, bog you down the red zone, make you settle for field goals or turn you over, which they did very successfully against the Chargers. The other thing that it tells me is that the offense is having longer, more methodical drives. Anytime that you're eating up the clock like that, you're shortening the amount of possessions in a game, and that's fewer points teams can score against you. And that's by design. The Denver Broncos want to be the team that has fewer possessions in this game because they simply aren't capable of boat racing Kansas City or the Chargers. And so what you do is you reduce the game down to a technical level, and you try to steal a possession in there somewhere. You get a turnover, then it's over. I mean, because you've gotten the turnover and you convert that. So the idea behind this defense and behind this offense, when they get the run game going, is successful. It's working. What they're doing is working. But you have to commit to it. You have to commit to that run game. The minute you start throwing the ball, all the metrics, all the things that make all the components of that work go away. We talk about complementary football all the time. It's literally complementary football. Running the football reduces the game to fewer possessions, allows your defense to expend more energy trying to turn people over because they don't have to chase people over the field for more plays, and that allows you to become what you want to be in that second half of football games. And like I said, it's been successful when they commit to it. It's
kind of interesting you bring that up because they're actually averaging fewer rushing yards per game right now than they were last year. But you brought up the time of possession. That is a big jump here. We go for almost 29 minutes last year to all the way up to about 31 and a half. And if you don't think that 2.5 minutes is a big deal, it is a huge, huge deal.
Right. And the number of plays per game, if you look at defensive plays per game, the number you want to keep it under, the target in the NFL in the modern era is 60 plays. You want to keep it under 60, right? And if you're the Broncos, you're trying to keep it under 50. Right? Because if you can keep that under 50, your defense is fresher at the end of games. And we saw how valuable that was. The Broncos in the third quarter against the Chargers came out, put a long drive together, and then didn't get anything done. The Broncos went 3 and out for negative yards and 8 yards, and then the Chargers came out and put another drive together.
Right.
But what happened? The Broncos were able to get interceptions because the defense was fresh enough to continue to be able to play that way instead of just flailing about and trying to get muddle through it. They were fresh enough they could make it work, and this is the benefit of shortening games like that.
I'd also say when you're talking about them being more fresh, as I'm rewatching the game again for like the third time, something that jumped out to me is they did have some ability to rotate. Their depth is no longer having to be straight up starters out there. They can rotate their outside linebackers. They can rotate their interior defensive line. McTelvin Agim was a breath of fresh air out there. He had 6 pressures in the game in the 20 snaps that he played. Just unbelievable. We knew he had those pass rush abilities. He had just historically struggled in the run, and he's been a healthy scratch up to this point. But you're starting to see that because if the Broncos can, on the front side of the thing, get that kind of pressure, it is going to work to the secondary. And a lot of people said, well, maybe this was the best game from the secondary. I think they've had some better ones, and I certainly thought that Kyle Fuller had a few of his struggles out there. But in the end, that is exactly the way this defense is supposed to operate. So the complementary nature of the way the Broncos played out there, I think some people think that it's still a pretty narrow margin because the Chargers still move the ball. And what if they did score on some of those? What if they kicked that field goal? What if they? But you know what? They didn't. And that's the thing is like teams create their own luck, and that's what this looked like to me.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Is preparation and then execution of that preparation and going out there, running the football, shortening the game, keeping it condensed like that. You get the rotation out of that. You get to keep guys fresh. The third and fourth quarter are vital for this defense. It doesn't matter if they move the ball up and down the field. What matters is if they're not scoring points. And this defense is designed to, it'll give up yards. That's fine. They don't mind surrendering yards to a point. And then they make their stand, and then they try to turn you over and make you settle for a field goal. And that happens several times. Now, some teams are going to score occasionally. It's going to happen. But in the end, I think that the formula that they've settled on is working. And if you look over the last 4 games, you're 3-1. The one game you lost, you couldn't stop the run, and you had a lot of linebackers out or dinged up in that game.
That's exactly
they
right.
couldn't do anything. So as long as you were able to stop the run and send 4 guys and get pressure, you're going to be successful with this defense.
Yeah, it's starting to look like Baron Browning might be one of the linchpins of this defense. It's remarkable.
We pay him now?
Well, yeah, right, because Curtis Robinson, who actually got released.
Yeah,
he obviously struggled, and that was part of the reason the Eagles were able to kind of do whatever they wanted. Some other things I noticed from this as I was doing this kind of snapshot of the last 7 seasons for the Broncos. So the points allowed is actually their lowest in the last 7 seasons, including the Super Bowl year, which is remarkable. Again, 11 games into the season. But I also noticed that this is the first time they've had a positive scoring differential since 2016. Mm-hmm. Now, they had a winning record then. Makes sense, right? 7-4 then. They're 6-5 now. But you go back, minus 15 last year. They were, minus 89 last year at this time. Minus 89. They are plus 32 right now. Minus 89 last year. Minus 42. 0. Minus 83. This is complementary. This is exactly like I know that the wins and losses would sort of dictate that, but that isn't necessarily the case because in the same division, the Broncos are actually leading everybody in the AFC West with plus 32. The Chiefs are next at plus 31, and then both the Raiders and the Chargers are underwater in their differential. It tells you a little bit more about this team, I think.
At plus 32, you're basically saying that the Broncos are outscoring their opponents by a field goal every game, and that's by design. That's what's happening is by design. Again, shortening the number of possessions and then coming down to getting the last possession. That's going to win you the football game. That's how they're trying to win. And there are people out there who will mischaracterize it as a coin flip strategy, which is not what it is. I get it when people who don't know football try to talk football. That's the way they go. But I think at the end of the day, if you're looking at what they're trying to do and you understand it conceptually at a football level, it's smart football. The question is, can you execute it? Because the margins are thin. You have to stick with it. And that's been the criticism point. Sometimes they don't stick with it. They let Teddy throw 35 times a game, and that's a wrong answer.
Yeah, it seems like they get a little ahead of themselves, right? Mm-hmm. We talked about filling their oats a little bit. We've talked about how they get a little too cute. I think you hit that right on the head. And so then it becomes the question. I think this is what we're going to have to come to in our next segment. Then it becomes the question on, do you stay within yourself against the Chiefs? Do you try to do something extraordinary against the Chiefs? Because that is an extraordinary opponent who's beat you 11 straight times. So we'll get into that coming up next. Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. As always, thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.